I've got the sweetest little bean in the world, and we are here to deliberate and discuss best old school throwback game of 2022. That's right, it's the Shacknews crew, and we're back to tell you what the best old school throwback game of 2022 is going to be. Let's start with some old school throwback nominees. An old school throwback game is a game that has like a retro vibe to it. Maybe it's a collection of classic games, some remasters, something like that. And old school, it's one of those things you know it when you see it. Frankly, that's just how it is. If you have to question if something is old school, it might not be old school. And if you're I don't know, in your early 20s, you don't get to declare if anything is old school. Donovan. All
It's
right.
not necessarily a
It's
remake,
coming.
but remakes are certainly eligible.
They are. Remakes are certainly eligible. I don't know. This year we got some good nominations in this category, and we got a lot of them. So I think we just need to dive right on in. I think that's what needs to happen. Who wants to start us off? Who thinks their nomination is fresh and dope and fly, which are all retro, old school throwback
Uh,
slang?
yeah,
Nation's definitely
I'll
all those
start. Yeah, I'll
things.
do Shredder's Revenge is definitely should be that nominated easily. That game took everything about the '90s beat 'em ups that were fun, and they somehow made them better. And that's insane to me that they were able to improve that formula. That's at its core. There's nothing really wrong with it, right? It works, but they put it into the game and they made it better. They improved it. They made it different. We talked about earlier. They added you go from 4 players to 6 players. You know what I mean? Like drop in, drop out co-op, couch co-op. Like they did everything, and it was so fun.
Yeah,
Such a cool,
combo
yeah.
variations, new abilities, all sorts of stuff. They really have taken because here's the thing about brawlers like that. They were very much a big thing in the arcade era because you could design them to eat quarters. Like it's just a game where you walk from the left to the right and you punch people. And that was it. Maybe you could do like two or three moves here and there. Maybe you had a special ability that ate your health, but it was very limited. And now we're at a point where like Dotemu has found a way to take this experience home and elaborate upon it and tweak the formula in order to bring it to like modern gaming sensibilities. And that is not an easy thing to accomplish, I think. And they've done such a brilliant job with all the brawling games that they've been doing. Streets of Rage 4 was like a big game for us the year it came out, and they're just blazing a trail. And I think when you have a franchise that's so iconic with so many generations already, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like think about it. Like we've basically been watching Ninja Turtles cartoons and films for like 30 plus years at this point. Like they've been around a long ass time, and like people still look at the original arcade games for the Ninja Turtles as some of the best arcade games ever made, like hands down, especially from that generation. So yeah, I like catching that vibe, bringing it to a modern era. I think Shredder's Revenge is like spot on with all that as well.
And like it can be like you can flub that, like you can mess it up. Look at Battletoads. Like that game did not. It was received very heavily mixed because they just
Yeah,
weren't able to improve on the formula, and they added weird
yeah.
things that need to be added. So like yeah,
Bubsy, man, remember they tried to bring back Bubsy? Oof.
I don't know why
But
they tried to bring Bubsy back in the first place. But
Because
but to
Cat
speak
what
Dora.
could go
but to
wrong?
speak to Blake's point about how those Turtles games from the '90s are like were total classics, they still are. And because of that, I actually have the Cowabunga collection as my best old school throwback, just because it collects all of those old school games, including the arcade ones. There are a couple of these that I never played. They got them from both North America and Japan. And also, Digital Eclipse just always goes the extra mile with these collections. And just the amount of work that not only went into seamlessly putting these back together, into adding online play to some of them, and also in compiling each and every one of those extras. the
Dude,
instruction
yeah.
manuals, the promotional pieces, the magazine scans, clips from stills from the cartoon, like all that kind of stuff. All just made it some of their best work that I've ever seen. And
Yeah.
as much as I
Oh,
like Shredder's Revenge, like I think in terms of like capturing that nostalgia element, I like the Cowabunga collection better.
dude. What you're saying about Digital Eclipse like rings like it strikes a chord with me too, Ozzy, because I have I have the Cowabunga collection, and that's what I delved into was all the stuff. They have scans of the boxes, not just for the US releases of games, but all the Japanese imports as well. Like all of that is all present and accounted for in super detailed. They have like they have a lot of the like pressers and pitch stuff that you would send to like arcades and things like that in there too. Like it's just a very thorough, detailed collection, and yeah, it's something that like Digital Eclipse. It's like their pedigree,
They're
Like
so good at this, and they keep
yeah,
getting better. And really quick, just for a 5-second tangent, that's also why I have in the honorable mention calendar the Atari 50 collection, and just like the 50 years worth of Atari games that they have, going from the 2600 all the way to the Lynx and the Jaguar. Like
yeah. Oh
they're
my
so
god,
good at this.
dude. Okay, getting like okay, I love the Atari Lynx, right? Freaking love it. One of my favorite handheld systems of all times, and we had a big conversation about it for like the Hall of Fame nominations last year. Bringing not only the Lynx, the Atari Jaguar was insane. I watched Greg interview the Digital Eclipse team about making the 50th anniversary collection, and the stuff that they have to go through. They basically have to replicate flaws in order for the Jaguar games to run properly. Like they have to dumb down the systems in order for them to function in a way that can run those games smoothly. Like
But
that's
I also love that you can run those games. This applies to Cowabunga collection as well. That you can run those games with fixes. That you can make it like you can
yeah,
fix the smoother frame rate and all that stuff. If you want like a more modernized, updated version of those games, you can have that. And I think that's really cool too.
yeah, yeah. They did make a few updated, tweaked versions of games. Yeah, it's a really solid collection. And yeah, props to Digital Eclipse. They're hitting them out of the park left and right. Everything they do. But I think we are in need of some other nominations here. Give me the the nominations. I do
Like,
declare.
you came to me with a game earlier this year for Indylicious, and I started playing it as a demo, and then the 1.0 launched, and it just got better and better as I kept playing it. I love Rampage. I love that game. I love it so much. I am a big Godzilla fan. I'm a big kaiju fan. I love any game that lets me be a big monster and just tear down a whole city. But there haven't been Rampage games in a long time, and even the newer ones that came out didn't really, I would say, improve upon what they did before. Terror of Hemosaurus is everything I want out of a new Rampage game. Um, that game is like all of the build. It's the typical style of like you play a giant kaiju, you go through a city, you knock everything down and destroy everything that you can, and make the people run around and and occasionally launch them. And I didn't know how good a game like that could be just by making the buildings like into little modular cubes where they actually have physics against each other. You take out a piece of the building and you start to see the top of the building sway until you take out enough that it just falls over and then it hits another building, and that causes a domino effect that makes everything just explode. And on top of that, they did I didn't realize how good a Rampage game could be just by adding a kick button to it. You can walk up to cars driving on the street and just punt them through buildings
I
and
always wondered why you
helicopters.
couldn't punt tanks in Rampage.
It's like you said, TJ. They took the Rampage formula and they were able to like improve upon it. They built on that foundation, which is really cool to see.
They built upon it in so many good ways. It's so fun to see like the kind of wanton destruction you can wreak in that game by using momentum, by using your own abilities, by using the actions that the game gives you. It is easily the funnest one of the funnest things I've played this year, and real high up there on my indie list as far as just how much joy it brought me to have a game like that this year.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was actually just playing World Tour the other week, and yeah, I always wondered why there weren't more games like Rampage, like city destroyers like that. I think King of the Monsters is the only thing I can think of that came after Rampage, and then Rampage World Tour came after that. But it really improved upon the formula. But to finally get like something decades later like this is like, it's got me pumped, and like, yeah, that's why it was on our radar for sure. And yeah, I haven't played the 1.0 version yet, but it's definitely on my radar as well. But yeah, we have
I've got one.
Donovan.
I've got a fun little nomination here.
Oh,
Bit of an outside pick for best old school throwback. I've got Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. Now you see, first Lego game came out in '97. I believe Lego Star Wars started somewhere around the early mid 2000s. So it's old school as far as I'm concerned. I played those games 2 decades ago as a child, and I think the new one is really a return to form for that series. Ignited all that nostalgia fuel that you want in an old school throwback. I think it's also just an amazing game, better than it feels like a Lego game has any right to be in 2022, especially given all the delays and uncertainty around its development. Um, it's got 9 worlds, essentially 9 movies full of content. It's endlessly replayable because the roster is just insane. Any Star Wars character that you can think of, damn near, is in there. Then you can go back and replay old missions with characters that were never in that movie or in that original story. It's fun to mix and match. I think visually it's gorgeous. Just like the detail in the Lego pieces, the like fine scratches and the way the light bounces off of them is awesome. It feels like the definitive Star Wars Lego game 20 years in the making at this point. So it is without a doubt my old school throwback 2022.
Legos and Star Wars, pretty sweet combination.
I really like the additions to the gameplay they have, like the third person over the shoulder shooting and stuff like that. Like it feels like a nice blend of old and new. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. I'm someone who kind of like burned out on Lego games a long time ago, but I had a good amount of fun. Skywalker's Revenge.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I had not really enjoyed a Lego game in quite a while, but that one was damn good.
I like Lego games in general. They're fun. They're accessible. I'm just a little burnout on Star Wars nowadays. Like that's me. That's me being old, cynical, and jaded. But the two you combine Lego and Star Wars. That's 2 solid franchises, and definitely ones that have been around for a long time. I mean, I don't know. A lot of these throwbacks are a lot older than the Lego franchise still, but
That's an old school.
We'll let it.
It is.
We'll consider it an old school throwback. I'll allow it.
I think we have one more nomination from Sam here, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe we do.
Yes. Now, before I dive into it, I just want to double check. Do we have any Resident Evil fans on staff? I think we've got a couple of Resident Evil fans. Yeah.
Never heard
now,
of
if it wasn't for Ozzy bringing this one to my attention, I would have missed it. It's Signalis. It is a survival horror game that harkens back to the Resident Evil of yesteryear, right? It does not have the same perspective as the OG. It doesn't have the fixed camera angle, so it's a sort of an isometric view, but you are exploring a damn near abandoned facility. You've got limited inventory space. You have the backtracking where you need to go and collect an item to unlock this door to progress this thing. And by golly, you have some bloody excellent puzzles in this game. I felt incredibly stupid at points and then felt incredibly intelligent as I was like, how did I miss this? Obviously, it is and then I felt like a genius. It's got some great tension in it. I didn't necessarily find it scary in the sense of I was like jump scares or anything, but I felt tense knowing that I had to make a decision of do I continue to push forwards or do I go back change up the gear in my inventory to try and like maybe take down these monsters that they were either going to get back up after I killed them and didn't burn them, or come climbing out of like tunnels or up through the grates and vents. And it just follows a kind of unusual storyline that it does tell you a story, but there's an element where you have to kind of piece it together yourself through reading notes and hacking into computers and reading what's on there, and looking at the environment and figuring out how this sort of all unfolded. So in terms of old school Throwback, it certainly reminded me quite a lot of Resident Evil titles. And if you haven't checked it out, well worth sussing that one out.
Just bought it. Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
Morgan, is that
I
the
was
one I
gonna
had you
say,
review?
It's also on Epic. It's
was-
on Game Pass. So if you've got Game Pass as well, you can
No
you
regrets.
can check it. Yeah,
I was gonna
it should
say,
be-
I saw David kind of transition from like kind of relaxed, and then when Sam started talking, I saw one of these, and I thought, I think David is making a discovery right before our eyes. I'm glad I was right.
I would have.
Right.
Yeah. If Terror of Hemosaurus hadn't happened, I would have been right there with Sam on the Signalis train. I played that game on Indylicious, and like I'd also seen a few other people play it, and like there's a mix of a lot of good old school Resident or survival horror vibes in it that aren't necessarily just Resident Evil. There's also like, it's not a very jump scary game. It's more like a suspenseful dread building game as you manage your resources and try, and not only that, but deal with certain revelations of what you're facing and how it relates to you. There are some very disturbing story beats in Signalis, and I also like that. Like for some of the puzzle solving elements, it switches to a first person view and has you search through this derelict area from your point of view. That makes me frightened of something coming out when I least expect it to. Like, I'm trying to solve a puzzle, I'm concentrating, and then suddenly I see something and like, I don't like that. What is that? It hits so many good vibes that I'm going to talk about in later categories.
Good vibes or
visually as
vibes?
well, it looks like a PlayStation 1 game in terms of the polygon structure of the characters and environments. And when you like look at it, the pause screen, it kind of looks like a CRT monitor. So there's those sort of retro.
It kind of reminds me of
there.
Fear Effect. Is that? It reminds me of Fear Effect in the stylistic, but like low poly style.
Very cool.
That's cool. Well,
So
that is definitely a throwback then to the PlayStation era. Wow. Okay. I think we're going to have to allow that one. But unless we have any other nominations, I think we should get around to the voting. What do you all say?
Let's do it.
All right. Morgan Shaver, I want to know, what's your vote?
I believe I put down TMNT Shredder's Revenge for this one.
You did. And there you go. One vote. Bill Lavoie.
Very good arguments, but I was not swayed. I am Shredder. Shredder's Revenge even.
Shredder's Revenge even. Sam, are you sticking with your guns?
Look,
Are you gonna?
I'm gonna stick with my guns. I gotta go with Signalis, and like I even was jotting down like codes to try and solve puzzles. Brilliant. Sticking with it.
These are all great games. I like all of these games, by the way. I'm really like this category. Because I'm old and I collect a ton of retro games. With that said, I mean, Shredder's Revenge is the best Ninja Turtles game since Turtles in Time. Like, hands down. It's so great. It gives me such joy that there is a new generation of gamers that are probably playing this with their parents and stuff like that, and loving it just as much as like I love like those initial arcade experiences, you know. I love this game head to toe, period. And that's why I'm voting for Shredder's Revenge. David L. Craddock.
Signalis. Sam won me over hard. Yeah.
I haven't even played it. I could just say, dude, what if I told you Shredder's Revenge was super like Resident Evil, David? Like, there's so much Resident Evil in it.
Okay,
There's
okay.
dogs.
I mean, it's not true, but you can
There's
tell you that.
mutants. There's tons of mutants in it. There's mutants everywhere, and you're fighting them off like the whole time.
The
You gotta-
thing is, I think an important part of these deliberations is trusting your peers, and Sam would not lead me wrong, and so I'm going Signal. I enjoyed Shredder's Revenge, but it also kind of reminded me that it's
how
fun.
old we are, or
Yeah, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. I'm into Signalis. I'm sticking with that vote.
That's fair. I think that's fair. Donovan, where are you doing? You're sticking with your Skywalkers?
No, I'm going with Signalis. I loved Sam's argument. Game sounds dope.
Wow. Greg Burkleton Burke.
Let's stay with Shredder's Revenge because they could have messed that up as evidence with the Turtles in Time remake they did that was terrible like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. Awful.
It was actually a lot longer than that.
It was.
believe
Oh
it or not.
God, it's
Yeah.
like seared in my memory. It was so bad when I played it. I
Xbox
was
Arcade
ugh.
old.
Dude, you're older than you
Wow.
think. You're older than you think, and time is moving faster than you think.
Shredder's
And
Revenge.
that's why I both hate and love old school throwback categories. TJ Denzer.
I'm going to talk more about Terror of Hemosaurus later, but for right now, I think I actually have to throw my chip into the Signalis hat.
Oh my goodness.
I love that game in so many ways. And yeah.
Oh man, wow, this is becoming a heated race suddenly. Ozzy Mejia, what's it gonna be at?
Ooh, at the risk of being a spoiler, I'm gonna stick with the Cowabunga collection.
At the risk of being a spoiler. Wow. You gotta take that risk. And Morgan, you voted for the Cowabunga collection or Shredder's Revenge already, right? We already got your vote. Okay.
Yeah.
So that leaves a couple of absentee votes that we got to get in here. Let's start off like, oh man, spreadsheets and things. I've got so many things going on here, gang. Oh my goodness gracious. Where are we? Here we are.
Asif did Cowabunga collection.
Asif is with the Cowabunga collection. A good choice. I really like the Cowabunga collection.
Dennis put TMNT, but he didn't specify Shredder's Revenge or
Dang
Cowabunga
it!
collection.
Dang it, Teddy.
I saw that. I saw that before we even started debating, and I was like, "That's gonna bite us in the ass."
It's Shredder's Revenge. I can say that with almost full confidence.
Yeah, Steve's got Shredder's Revenge.
I actually think that if you look at TMNT, it has an N in it, and so does Signalis. So I feel like the science is behind the Signalis vote.
Overruled.
It had to happen once.
All right. Sorry there, David. And all right. We're gonna say that Denny and Steve both voted for Shredder's Revenge because Steve obviously voted for it, and I'm just gonna say that Denny was definitely. I'm just gonna call it like I'm interpreting the law here that he was with Shredder's Revenge. Even if he voted for the Cowabunga collection, though, TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge is still your best old school throwback game of 2022.